Hello, Dylan. Welcome to Disabled and Proud. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. I have already said to you that I'm really looking forward to this chat because I feel like I'm going to learn loads. But I am genuinely so excited for this because there's so much to talk about between your photography, between like your activism, between like, there's loads to like cover as a topic. So I'm really excited to get stuck in.
Yeah, I can't wait to share it with you.
So the first question that I ask every single guest is, how do you refer to your disability?
So the way that I would see it is, I wouldn't see it as a disability.
Uh-huh.
I would just see it as something it's part of who I am.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't see it as a negative thing. I would see it as something that's really helped me to share like a positive story to people.
Yeah. And what is your disability, if you don't mind me asking? And the reason I'm asking this before someone jumps down my throat and being like, oh, you shouldn't ask someone to share their medical history, is because this is incredibly unique. Like hyper unique. And I don't want to talk about it because I know absolutely sweet FA, but you do, and I'm going to let you wax lyrical all about it because I think this is incredible.
So I have a condition called NDP syndrome, which stands for mandibular dysplasia with deafness and photoid features. Wow. It's quite hard to say. It's quite a long word.
Yeah.
And it can affect many things. So one of the things that it affects is my hearing. So I have 2 hearing aids.
Yeah.
And it also affects the loss of body fat. So on the arms, the legs, and also on the cheeks. And also another thing is, since I have no body fat, it's hard to do physical activities.
Yeah.
So things like rugby, or also lifting really heavy stuff. So those are the challenges, but I think there's also like positives to it. You know how people have wireless, the ear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the hearing aids can connect to the phone wirelessly. So it's really cool. So that's what I love about the hearing aids, that they connect to music, and they also connect to like the TV as well. So it's really cool. Yeah.
That would save so many arguments in my house if we could like have one person listening to one thing and another person listening to something else. It would save so many issues. Am I right in saying that you were born disabled? This is not something that you acquire. You are born disabled.
Well, I wasn't born with the condition. It's quite, because it happened like really unexpected, like at a time where it just happened and no one knew what was wrong.
Yeah.
So like I was born just like a normal baby. Had really big fluffy cheeks and yeah, so I was born a normal baby, and I was just really happy living with my mum.
Yeah.
And then about when I was 3 years old, I started to get very ill.
Yeah.
And I didn't eat very much, and I started to lose a lot of weight. And then some of my mum's friends started like saying, "Hey, your wee son's not eating," and then that's when my mum started to get worried, like why are people talking about my son? And then my mum, then I had to go to the hospital quite a lot.
Yeah.
They had to do X-rays and tests, and the doctors had didn't really know what was wrong.
Yeah.
So it took a long time because the doctors did eventually find out what was wrong 10 years later. So it took the doctors and scientists 10 years to work out what was wrong.
10 years. That's
Yeah.
not like a week. It's not like a month. That's like 10 whole years. Like I don't have the words because I can't imagine what it must have been like for your mum to also not know through those 10 years. How can she best support you? How can she best help you? But also like for you as well, not knowing what this condition is, what's going on, like what's gonna help you out, what's gonna hinder you. I can't imagine to even pretend what it would to know what it would be like for those 10 years to not know what was going on like within you. That must have been really complex.
Well, the doctors did give they did say that it could be a few things, like some of the things they said it could be cancer, or it could be progeria. And also the things with my condition is that it's similar features to progeria, but it's like it's not the same condition, but it's like similar facial features. And so the doctors thought it was cancer or progeria, but it wasn't any of those. And my mum just constantly was like, "What's wrong? Can we please find out?"
Yeah, I bet. Wow, like your mum must be super strong.
Yeah.
I always think there's like mothers of disabled children have a really special place in my heart because I think about my own mum and I think, when I was born, like nobody knew that I was going to like come out disabled. And like, I just have such a respect and like such an admiration for them because they've got to be the strongest people on the planet, because there are some times when life does knock you back and there's nothing that you can do about it because it is down to your disability. And like, I love all mums of disabled kids because they have like a real strength and rawness in them that I'm not saying that other mums don't, but there's something very special about mums of disabled children. And like your mum is obviously cut from the same cloth. So that's like incredible that she was there to support you as well during that time, because it must have been wild.
Yeah, I'm still really glad. And she still does it like today. She's still always supporting me and helping me in everything that I do. So I think like just the mums has played a massive role in my life. Just like they're always there for you.
Also, I think there's something about being Scottish as well, and I can say this, that you are inherently very close to your family. Sometimes whether you want to be or not, you are inherently close to them. And like I completely understand that like closeness and proximity, because I know what I'm like with my mum, so I can only imagine what you'd be like with your mum. Like you're just super close to them. And for you, if you don't mind me asking, what was it like for you growing up as a child, especially like surrounding school, not necessarily having a diagnosis? What was that whole experience like for you?
I think going to school, not being diagnosed, and also not just me not knowing what it is, but other people. Like, just like I know like some people may, if you don't know what something is, you'll look at it so people stare. And some people might laugh. And I think that was the hardest part. I think just like also questioning why are people staring and why are some people laughing. And I found it hard to understand like why are they doing that. And I think the start of primary school was especially difficult. I think just going in like to a new school, not knowing anyone and not knowing how to talk to people like about what's wrong.
Yeah.
I think just especially because it was just so new.
Yeah.
And I think as well what I try to do is, well, what I did do in primary school is I always used to cover my face.
Uh-huh.
I always used to wear my hood up
Yeah.
with a hat on, and that was just a way that so people couldn't see.
Yeah.
So I was kind of hiding myself from people, not wanting people to see me.
Yeah.
And I used to just every like break and lunch, I would just sit in the corner and
Yeah.
have lunch and not being able to talk to anyone.
Wow. There's so much to like unpack in that, and I'm not going to do too much of it because I think that there are so much more fun things that we can talk about, because some of the things that you're doing is like insane. Like I've looked at all of your photography and I think it's incredible, but that's something that I'd quite like to talk about is for you. I've seen a quote or like, you know, some videos of you saying that you found photography and it was almost like an escape for you. And I was wondering if you could just go on to explain a bit more about how you found photography and like your passion for it, because I've seen some of your photographs. Actually, that's a massive lie. I've seen all of them. I've been on your website. I spent a good like few hours looking at them. And I think your photographs are genuinely incredible. And what you said on your website is that sometimes you can take pictures of people who are by themselves and it represents loneliness. And I just look at your photographs and they are so powerful. And I would just love it if you could talk to me a bit more about like your love for photography, how you got into it, and where you take your best photos and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so firstly, I found photography probably at the start of high school.
Uh-huh.
So when I first started high school, because I just had a phone, I didn't actually have a camera. So basically, I was just going to high school every day, and I would always take photos on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you'd always get the sunset and the sunrise. And also just the build. My school was quite like architectural, so it was quite lots of shapes, and so I would always go to school really early before it even started.
Yeah.
And I would take photos around the school. And then I think about 3 years into high school, an English teacher was doing a school magazine,
Yeah.
and I showed him the photographs because he was my English teacher,
Yeah.
and I showed the photographs to him, and he was just amazed by them.
Yeah.
And what he said to me is, "Do you want to feature some of your photographs in this magazine?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yes, yes, I want to." Um, and I think that was a great way for other people to see them as well,
Yeah.
because only my English teacher saw them. So it was a great way to get my work out there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I featured in the magazine, and so many people after it came to me and said, "Oh, I really like your photographs. I saw it in the magazine." Um, and that was just, I then thought to myself, "Oh, loads of people are loving this. Should I
Yeah.
do this more?"
Yeah.
Um, and then I continued and continued to take photos. Um, and because they had a magazine every year,
Uh-huh.
and I got featured in it again.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just, again, it was a really positive thing that was happening. Um, and then as I moved up in high school, I really wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
Um, I think because in primary school I didn't really understand my condition, but
Yeah.
as I moved up to high school, I started to understand it more. And what I did eventually do when I was in high school is that I did an assembly.
Oh, wow.
So where I talked to, I think it was over 400 students.
Wow, that's like not a small number. It's huge.
Yeah, so it was like all the younger ones.
Yeah.
I think I was really nervous at the start because I'd never done a presentation before.
Yeah.
Um, and I think just stepping on that stage in front of all the students and the teachers as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like it was a great way to just explain why I had this condition, but also to
Yeah.
talk about how I have coped having the
Mhm.
condition.
Yeah.
That's when photography came in.
Yeah.
Um, and also I shared my photographs at the assembly, and just after the assembly, loads and more people came to ask me questions. Um, some people wanted to be my friend.
Yeah.
And so it did, it was just a changing moment, just
Yeah.
being able to do something like that. And it has a huge positive impact.
I can imagine, especially it being such a turning point and realizing that actually, because I think everybody likes to dabble in photography, but it doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean you're good at it. Like
yeah, yeah.
some people are very naturally talented, and some people should just stick to being a holiday photographer. Like, no, absolutely like no shade, but it's maybe
Because
not your
I know some people they just go snap, 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 like just randomly
yeah.
when they're not actually realizing, oh, I'm very good at this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to have a talent, particularly in the arts, is always difficult to pursue. It's never necessarily the
Yeah,
easiest thing because it's not, you can't quantify whether it's good or bad. It's very much on perception. And so I
yeah,
think the fact that you've been doing photography now for like what, 8, 9 years, something like
yeah.
that, like, and you've shown in exhibits as well, especially at such a young age, is very fortuitous.
Yeah, I think just being able to, I'm really glad that I found photography at a young age,
Yeah.
because I feel if I hadn't have found photography, what would I be doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question that I always ask myself is, what if I hadn't have found this? I think it would have still been very difficult. I
Uh-huh.
think not having something that I'm really passionate about, something that I'm really happy about.
Yeah.
Um, but I just think having found that, because always wanting to take new photos.
Yeah.
I'm always wanting to explore. And I think photography as well, it also really helped me during lockdown.
Yeah.
I think that was a big changing point, is being just locked inside.
Yeah.
Um, but having that photography wanted me to go out and
Yeah.
explore and experience new places.
Yeah. And especially like during lockdown, such a weird time for everybody involved. But being able to like go out and actually actively wanting to explore would have just been so beneficial for you. And like, for anybody who also wants to do that, but particularly for you, considering photography really is your like, your love. Being able to go out and explore and take photos, and then being able to do the whole like lockdown thing when you come back inside and do your editing, like
Yeah.
it's quite like a nice thing to be able to have.
Yeah, it was a really just something that I like. Photography's also helped me to, well, like, tell a story,
Yeah.
and so just tell people how I see the world,
Yeah.
um, and also just because my grandpa also used to take photos,
Oh, no way.
um, when he lived in New York. When he went to New York, he also took black and white photographs on a really old. He had a film camera,
Wow.
um, so he used to take photos in New York, and my mum gave me his camera for my 18th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So I kept that, and that was a really good present.
Yeah, what a great present to get. Oh, I love that. That's so lovely. So, with your photography, do you think that photography and being able to take these photographs, do you think that helped you get into disability activism? Or was it like a different way that you went into disability activism?
I feel that photography, like I said, it's helped me to tell a story.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes I do want to talk about why I'm passionate about photography, how it helped me to cope with the condition.
Yeah.
Because in my photography, sometimes I talk about different things, and then sometimes I talk about my condition through
Yeah.
the photography. And so I feel that photography it's just been a changing moment.
Uh-huh.
And I feel that my condition has, I think, like photography being the positive part of it.
Yeah.
I've seen a few other people with disabilities do like podcasts like you,
Yeah.
like what you're doing. And so I've seen a few people do that, and that's really helped me to also tell people about my disability,
Yeah.
because I feel if I don't speak about my disability, it's not going to raise awareness,
Yeah.
and not many people are going to understand what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel just telling people about it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think being able to share about my disability through podcasts and newspapers and magazines,
Yeah.
um, I feel that it's a really changing moment. But I feel that there is some, because I know social media can be a negative place,
Yeah.
but it can also be a really, really positive place,
Mm-hmm.
just to express who you are, and also express what you like doing. So I think social media was a really great way to share my photography on social media.
Yeah.
And again, just to create the website as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel that I've got I've been really inspired by other people to talk about my disability,
Yeah.
and to also talk about it in a positive way, not a negative way.
I think that's very, very true, is that social media does have its humongous benefits when it comes to talking about disability, because, 9 times out of 10, a disabled child is generally the only disabled child in the room. So being able to find a community of people who might not necessarily look the same or have the same conditions as you or the same disability as you, but understand the disabled experience is invaluable, because it gives you that sense of community that you might not have necessarily had. And I know that I can definitely say that being a part of the disabled community is one of my favorite things, because the people that I've been able to connect with and talk to and hear about everybody's stories and lives has been, absolutely like enriching for my life. So I think you're very, very right with what you say about social media and being able to explain and talk about disability in a positive light, because, we are underrepresented and we are misrepresented all the time. That's like factual. That's not, me being airy fairy. But I love that that's what you're using your social media for, is, expressing who you are, talking a bit about disability, but also showing your photography, because like I said, I've seen some of your pieces and I absolutely love them and I think they're brilliant. And I want everyone else to go and see them, because I think they're so good. I like to ask everyone, do they have a piece of advice for their younger self, so a younger Dylan, but also a piece of advice for a younger person with the same disability as them?
I think because I'm always changing, Like my mindset is always changing. And I think differently now to when I was younger. So I feel what I would say to me when I was younger is just keep going and just pursue what I love to do.
Yeah.
I think just being able to have that perseverance and being able to be happy and to also spend time with the people who make me happy.
Yeah.
Like my mom, especially
Yeah.
my mom, and but also just being able to put a smile on someone else's face also made me happy.
Yeah.
So I feel when I would just want to spread that positive message,
Yeah.
as I still do today, and I think just being able to keep up the positivity and keep spreading that that positive message,
Yeah.
because I feel that at the moment, I still see the world as an erupting volcano, um, because I feel like there's so much going on in the world right now
Yeah.
that it's kind of exploding,
Yeah.
um, and I feel just that the world needs that more kindness and positivity, like
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
I feel it needs more of it, I think.
I completely agree with you. And I actually love that analogy that the world is like an exploding volcano. Because I also think, I'm like, when does the madness stop? Like, when, like, it only seems to be getting crazier and like more wild as time goes on. And I think you're very, very right in saying that the world does need a lot more kindness and a lot more positivity. And if you're able to share that message, then you should, like, if you're able to do it, then why not? I like to ask everyone about themselves in terms of a positive attribute they think they might have. Because I think as disabled people, it's not always the easiest to pull out a positive attribute about ourselves, because quite often we're told that, disabled people are second in line, or, we're other, or we're next to. But actually, all disabled people have brilliant traits, but also all disabled people have awful traits as well. But I was wondering, is there a particular trait or an attribute that you have that actually you look back and you think, wow, I'm so proud of myself for having that positive attribute?
I think the one of the attributes is just having that hunger for kindness, I think.
Oh, I love that.
Um so I think always wanting, like I said, is to try and put a smile on someone else's face. Like if someone's having a bad day, and they feel like they're feeling down or they're feeling lonely,
Mm-hmm.
is to just ask that person how they're feeling,
Yeah.
and try to help them come up with like a strategy to help them change how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So I feel like, because when I was feeling down, I would look to something that I'm really happy, something that I love doing, like photography, and that helped me to change how I was feeling.
Yeah.
But also, it could just be really simple by talking to a friend or talking to a family member,
Yeah.
and that can really help change the mindset of someone who is feeling down or lonely. And
Yeah.
I feel that kindness is something that is just a big part of me.
I love that so much. Like, a hunger for kindness. Like, what a beautiful thing to have, because it's sorely lacking in this world. And like, what a beautiful attribute to have, a hunger for kindness. I think, oh, I love that. I think that's, yeah, I think that's so lovely. I'm giggling because I ask everybody this question, and the answers that I get are varied all the time. And I know that yours are going to be just as varied, but as disabled people, we get weird and wonderful questions from the public regularly, more often than not. And I was wondering, is there a particular set of questions or one particular question that you get asked and every time you're like, oh my God, not again? Or like, or you think to yourself, like, what a weird interaction this is.
I think I've been asked so many questions. I think some of the questions I've been asked have been so random. Like some of them had, like, some people, I think, in what was it, school, and like, so I think it was when I was in high school, someone asked me, do you know the answer to this maths question? And but it's just stuff like that, and also just do you know how to pronounce this word?
Wow.
So like, yeah, stuff like that. Like, because when I was like in English, there's some really tricky words.
Yeah.
Because you have to read like a full 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
But some of the English words in some books, like, it's so hard to spell it, but it's also really hard to say it.
Yeah.
And I just used to get that question as, how do you spell this word? So just be like, I can remember one of the words was electricity,
Uh-huh.
but it's like I can say it, but like I used to think, how do you spell electricity? But yeah, just like I know how to say it, but it's just the spelling. Like I used to think that it had a K in it.
Understandable. Like, it's not the easiest word to spell, and also English as a language in general, 9 times out of 10 does not make sense. Like, I completely understand that. Like, I'm with you.
Yeah, so that's just the random questions I've been asked, is how do you spell this word?
That's so
Um, yeah, so that was like almost every time I went in the English classroom, I would always be asked that, and I'm not. It's not just the students that would ask that. Some of my teachers would ask, Dylan, how do you spell this word? Because there's been some times where we were doing an English essay, and we were like practicing for it, and the teacher would be like, right, Dylan, it's your turn. Right, I'm going to give you a word, and I'm going to write it up on the board. So you need to tell me how to spell it. And then the whole class would be watching you, and one, if you got it wrong, they'd be
I
like,
would
you got it
genuinely,
wrong.
like, I would die. I would genuinely die. I'm like not a great speller as it is. So I'd be like, I'm running away.
I know some people in the class got it absolutely right, and then
Yeah.
there'd be some people who would put random letters in.
Yeah.
Um, and it was, some of the words were really tricky, and then other words were quite easy, but still some people didn't get them.
Yeah.
Um,
And so for you, I know that you took part in the campaign that was dealing with facial distortions and not making fun of them. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's such an important campaign and it highlights a lot of things that people don't necessarily take on board. So how did you get involved in that?
so basically, the charity Changing Faces,
Yeah.
and they support people who have a disability or a facial difference,
Mm-hmm.
and they do lots of campaigning to try and support people and also to raise that awareness.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, what I try and do is I try and promote what they're doing, and help them out,
Yeah.
because I really love what that charity does for people.
Yeah.
And also I really love raising awareness for charities and also helping raise money.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing, is that I always love raising money for charities, and I have since I was in primary school. I've always loved, because again, it's
Yeah.
helping people who need it the most.
Yeah.
And it's really having a positive impact, and it's putting a smile on someone else's face, and
Yeah.
it's also making me happy, because it's showing that kindness again.
Yeah. And that's everything that you stand for. So I think that's like, just feel like this conversation is like a big hug and a blanket. That's how I feel on the inside. I only have one final question for you, Dylan, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it. But that is, Dylan, are you disabled and proud?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for giving up your time today to be on this podcast. I've really loved listening about your passion for photography and as you said, your hunger for kindness, because I think actually the world does need a lot more of that, and how beautiful is that for that to be like your positive attribute about yourself. And yeah, like thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it as well.